Welcome to You, Me, and the Dogs, the podcast where we explore the wonderful world of pet ownership. Join me every Wednesday as my guests and I share personal stories, insights, and experiences, of course, with dogs. Today, I'm taking a hike with Meagan and Grayson. You could follow them on Instagram at Grayson the Fosterfield. Tell me, are you a native New Yorker or?
Technically Jersey, but technically Jersey people say New York because it's Jersey. So I was born and raised in Jersey, lived there for 23 years, and then moved to New York because that's what you do in New Jersey. We were in New York. I was in New York for 8 years.
Okay. You were Carroll Garden?
I was in Park Slope.
Okay. I was close. I was like, this Brooklyn.
Yeah, it's a nice area.
Yeah. I lived in Fort Greene. So when I would look at your pictures, it would give me so much nostalgia because I was like, I've been there. Do you miss it?
I don't.
Okay, good.
I'm boring and old, and I outgrew the city. And I think having a dog like him definitely made that happen a little quicker. Go poops. All right, come on, poopy face. Yeah, we give weird nicknames. We don't actually call him by his name.
Don't worry. I get it.
We only say his name when we're giving commands, and otherwise it's poopy face. Our current weird one is Basta Bings, and we have a little theme song with it. Because what parent doesn't have a theme song for their dog?
Miss you there, is what I call him, because he's very, he's a funny boy.
They all are.
Yeah. You know, funny enough, a lot of people call their dog Poopy or Butt and I find it so funny.
So we have one that's kind of butt related. We say Booty Boy.
Okay.
You're my booty boy. Yeah, you are. Or he gets really, really waggy when he sees people he loves, obviously. Aww. And so it went from Waggy Boy to Wagyu Beef. Are you our little Wagyu Beef?
You.
Yeah, you're my little booty boy.
Okay. So when did you get Grace?
He was a foster in July of 2021.
Okay.
He was number 14. And he was actually an emergency foster situation.
Okay.
And so I was supposed to go on vacation, so I was like, I can't take a permanent foster. They're like, you just need to hold him. It was a Thursday night. He's like, just hold him for 3 days. I was like, okay, I could do that. And then the second I brought him upstairs to the apartment, I was like, oh, shit, he's not leaving.
So you knew instantly?
I did. I was like, so after 14 fosters, you kind of get an idea of what you want.
Yeah.
And I always liked black dogs, which I know they'd never adopt. But I always wanted a black pit bull. And I was like, I don't want it to be a puppy because I'm not doing house training in an apartment, especially with our slow elevator. And I was like, I need it to be at least somewhat walkable in a city. I know not every dog is a city dog, but I need it to be I can't start from scratch. I don't have the time and I don't have the energy for it. Here comes this dog who was just like, all right, let's pee outside. Let's go upstairs. Let's settle with a bone. And I'm like, what? What are you doing?
But what made you foster? What was the beginning? You wanted a dog or?
So I've always been a dog lover.
Okay.
But I work in the legal field. So I was never allowed to have a dog because of my hours. I used to work, I sometimes still do work 80 hours a week. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, I was like, now that I'm home all the time, this is my time to do something. I don't think I can still get a dog because of my hours, once the world goes back to normal, but at least I can do something good with my time. Right. So that's why I started fostering.
Okay.
And I started fostering in July of 2020. And
so you waited 3 months maybe?
Pretty much.
Right.
Once I realized that this was not going to be over in a couple of weeks like everyone thought it was all right, let's see what we can do.
Okay.
I now have a remote job so that even if I am working the terrible hours I am, I'm around, I can help out.
Right. And then you still foster?
I do, yes. As you can tell, he likes to block traffic and slow people down.
It's okay.
We've had, I think 5 or 6 since adopting him.
Okay, so then you adopted him, and with his reactivity, how did that?
When he started going crazy?
Yeah. I mean, sure.
It's okay. You could be as blunt as possible. So he was your stereotypical happy-go-lucky puppy. We fostered him in July.
Okay.
He started having some leash reactivity in like December-ish.
Okay. When you fostered another dog, you never saw any reactivity or?
I have fostered, so my second foster was a almost 90-pound lab that was tied outside, so he never got to exercise. He was never walked on a leash or whatever. Aww. He was pretty leash reactive. But in general, he was fine with people.
Right.
And so like that made it manageable when I fostered him.
Yeah.
Any anxiety or reactivity or any behavioral challenges I had with the fosters, they're always short-lived because I never kept them for that long.
Right.
Because in the pandemic, like, people were adopting like crazy. His leash reactivity started that winter, and he had a lot of, like, medical issues his first winter. I knew that the salt could burn his paws, so I got dog boots.
Yeah.
But the dog boots rubbed against his dew claws, which caused infections. So it was a lot of managing his hands without cooperative care in the beginning. And that got him a little freaked out about people touching his paws. And then he started, like, balding and getting rashes all over the place. And then we took him to the vet for what I assume was allergies. And the very first vet pinned him to a table to try to administer Cytopoint. And from there, he, like, freaked out, didn't like anyone hovering over him, didn't like people touching him anymore. And the crazy thing is like, with those dew claw infections, we brought him to the emergency vet 3 times in a span of 2 months. And he would happily go with the vet. I would give the leash to the vet, and he would just be like, okay, where are we going now?
Yeah.
That appointment was a turning point.
That was a turning point. For me, after I did, because I'm pet tech certified, when I did the training, I was like, holy fuck. It's true. Holy fuck. Your vet needs to be your best friend.
And it sucks because, like, when they're the professional, you trust them.
Right.
So we're just sitting there watching this happen, and I'm like, do I stop it? Do I say something? But, like, they're the professional. What do I know?
Right.
I've had this dog now for 6 months. I don't know anything.
Right. Oh, my gosh.
And it actually has happened again. So we went from a small local vet in North Slope to a bigger New York City chain.
Okay.
And that chain, this new and improved, their website's like, we work with your animal, we work at their pace. The first vet visit was like, fine. And then we went last year when he was having his like complete mental breakdown, which I've written about in my Instagram, like last January to February, out of nowhere, he started snapping at Adam, my husband.
Yeah.
That was super weird. And then he was like so anxious that like a leaf would blow and he would like turn around barking like crazy. And I'm like, what's happening? And that turned out to be pain. But during that time, I asked for a sedated exam. I even got a special like appointment for a sedated exam because you need more time for it. And then the day of the exam, the vet refused to do it. And I was like,
what?
My dog needs a sedated exam. There's no reason for you to stress him out to get blood work from him.
Right. And especially when you're requesting it.
She's like, it'll be cheaper if you don't do a sedated exam. And I'm like, but I have pet insurance and I'm saying I will pay for it.
Right.
I want the sedated exam. She's like, well, we're not going to do it unless it's medically necessary. And I'm like, I'm telling you, he needs a sedated exam. I have a behaviorist. I have a trainer. He needs a sedated exam. I'm not just pulling this out of nowhere. They refused to, then they kicked me out of the room to do what they wanted to do. When I came back, he was like, I know that people use towels to like hide their faces from like scary things, but it was so tightly wrapped around his head.
Right.
His eyes were like intense whale eye. He was pinned to a wall. And I said to them, I was like, you cannot pin him. If you cannot get it done, do not do it. I will pay for the visit. I don't care. Do not do that.
Right.
They did it anyway. I went home and I like hysterically cried to my husband, who's like your standard like golden retriever gamer boyfriend. So like when he got angry and he was ready to commit murder, I was like, I am justified.
Right.
That was like a hot mess.
When it comes to like vets, I feel like depending on what you get, let's hope you're caring, right? Because the thing is, they have so many dogs and so many clients and so many, you know?
The problem is like, I think it's exactly that. You're not just an owner. You have to basically become an expert.
Right.
To advocate for your dog. And like, you're not aware of this. So like.
Right.
Like now, if someone does something to my dog and I'm like, no, we're just going to walk out of here, like I'll do it. But 2 years ago, I didn't know. I thought that they would have my back and they would make sure that I was the best owner.
Right.
But no, it's a lot more like, you got to just figure it out yourself.
Right.
Oh, and they also refused to talk to me about behavioral medication. Because before that visit, I did my research and I was like, maybe he just needs this. Maybe the world is just a little bit too much, especially in the city, and he needs this. And when I asked the vet this, she said, if he's aggressive, there's nothing I can do. You can just put him down. Can I at least talk to you about medication? And she goes, puppy Prozac will make it worse. And I'm like, it happens in some cases, but not all cases.
Yeah.
Can you at least talk to me about why, what are my options, like, etc.
Right.
She was like, no, I can't help you. Yeah. She's a doll.
So I'm sure you changed vets.
So immediately after that vet, I like, it also sucks because that was a time where like we were so hopeless and lost. Like he's snapping at his own dad
Right.
for putting his harness on, which Adam does every morning. Adam does morning walks, I do nighttime walks. So like we were just completely at a loss, and then this vet says this to me, and like of course you spiral, right?
Right.
I did an Instagram post being like, I need help, someone help me, I don't know what to do. The good vet's month waiting list, like I can't wait, like I need to know
Right.
what's wrong because this is not him.
Yeah. And so abrupt.
Yeah. So the first person that reached out, they were like, oh, look into like a board and train. And I was like, I don't know anything about board and trains. I'll look into it though. The dog that we're actually dog sitting, one of his best friends, used a board and train called Instinct Dog Training. So I reached out to them, and they are actually the first ones that were like, we would be happy to help, but I think you should see if he's in pain.
Yep.
You know, if he's acting like this, which is not normal for him, he's only, at the time he was only like 2. He's like, he's only 2, he's probably in pain.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to stop playing. He doesn't want to stop doing things
Right.
that's really fun. So check that out. And I was like, but he's never even limped. And they're like, exactly.
Yeah.
So he's probably lashing out because he doesn't know how to tell you, but he's still in pain.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So we did thermal imaging.
Yeah. That I wanted to ask you about that.
And the thermal imaging is where it showed that he does have pain spots in one of his hind legs by his like hip.
Okay.
And also his back. Thermal imaging can tell you where there are like warmer versus colder spots that shouldn't happen, but they can't actually diagnose.
Okay.
But for us, it was the
that's vital.
best way to do it because they didn't have to interact with him.
Yeah.
We went into a room, we put a towel over his face while like just shoved treats into his muzzle. And then they literally just like stood by him, used a quick scanner, and then they told us a couple days later. They did not have to interact with him at all. Up to that point, that was like the best visit we've ever had with a vet. And,
It's like a what? Like a remote or a wand or?
you know those thermometers you use?
Oh, okay, a thermal.
Yeah, it kind of looks like that. They kind of just like
Okay.
scanned it 2 feet away from him like this.
Like the image.
Yes.
I saw the image you put, and I was like, whoa, that's
It was pretty detailed.
yeah.
So they were like, there's definitely something going on. She got on a phone call with us, spoke us through, this is what it's telling me. This is what my observations are, what I think it could be. But without actual like deeper scans, I can't tell you, like I can't give a diagnosis.
Right.
So what we need to do is we need to find a vet. I still need to talk to someone about behavioral medications. And then we also need to get him a sedated x-ray. Her name is Dr. Stephanie's, I'm going to butcher her last name. I think it's Silberstein.
Okay.
She's also on Instagram.
Okay.
Her dogs are Tembo and Leica.
Okay.
She does at-home vet visits. And so she came in, did a happy visit. She spoke to us about behavioral meds because like we could get her in within like a couple of days. She talked about the pros and cons of each. She talked about what her experiences are because her dogs are also on anxiety meds. Okay. She's a vet and she's also heavily involved in rescue, so she sees a lot of things. And it was like thank God someone's talking to me and like also not talking to me like I'm dumb, right?
Right.
Like I know I obviously don't know vet things, but like I'm trying.
Right.
It was like the best conversation ever. She got us on meds. She got us pain meds for his inflammation. Within 24 hours on pain meds, he completely changed. Like he was no longer snapping at everything.
Right.
He wasn't like trying to like kill everyone in his path. Even with his x-rays, which we did get last April, it's not hip dysplasia. It's not arthritis because they said they would have seen that.
Like for example, my dog, he has very rough paws. At like 5-6 months, he started having pain. Like he started limping. I took him to the vet, and they give you medication, but they were like, we can't see anything. And they did x-ray, nothing. What they ended up saying was that it's just something that spurs up mostly in the winter.
That's kind of what we got too.
Okay.
They're like, you could do an MRI, you could do further scans.
Yeah.
But like, why sedate him unnecessarily when like, chances are it probably also won't give you a succinct answer.
Correct. Yeah.
The doctors were like, you know, he is on the younger side. Everything else is completely healthy right now. We know it's not like a tumor or any of like thing like that. Honestly, he might just be prone to getting hurt.
Right.
I was like, oh, awesome. We have a dog that's prone to getting hurt, that snaps when he's in pain. And I'm like, oh, lovely.
Yeah.
A couple days before we saw Dr. Stephanie, that's when he started limping. And at that point, it had been a month since his behavioral changes. And that's the first time we ever saw like a physical difference in his gait or anything.
Right. Yeah, and it's kind of tricky to catch it.
Yes.
If you're not observing it.
Or if you just don't know
Yeah.
gait. Who pays attention to their dog's gait as much as I do now? No one.
As someone that's very holistic, I really hate when they tell me, give this medication. But in your, like, how did you outweigh that? Did you care if it was a natural thing at that point, or?
I've actually been asked before, like, what our long-term plan is for his pain and for his anxiety meds. Because someone once asked, like, are you going to just have him on fluoxetine for the rest of his life? And, like, I know there are side effects, as with every medication. I haven't given it much thought.
Okay.
I feel like we need to tackle what's in front of us first.
Yeah.
And once we perfect that, then we can move on. From like a holistic standpoint, I used to be the person that like, oh, this supplement sounds great. Let me just dump it into my dog's food. Hope it works. Now that I know that he does have some joint or muscle things, we have spoken to our vet and our vet behaviorist to get things that are like actually vet approved, that they've seen have worked. When he started acting out, he needs CBD oil and he needs relief chews and he needs all of these things. And my vet's like, please stop that immediately. And I was like, okay, why? And she actually broke it down for someone who doesn't have a science background to understand it, which I thought was super helpful.
Right.
And then she also talked about how like CBD is not regulated, especially within the dog industry. So long term, we have the correct supplements now, and then we just have to like take it easy. He loves to jump up and down things. He loves to chase after his friends. And I'm more than happy to let him do that. But like, so his best friend is Bombay, and then he's a Great Pyrenees mix. And then his other bestie is Dishka, who is an Aussie mix. And Dishka is an Aussie mix. So she is super like agility to 1,000. She can jump, she can whatever. He tries to follow her. And I'm like, but you can't, because you're going to get hurt. So we try to limit those things. Now that we live in a house instead of an apartment, there's like more space for him to slip. So we've realized, because he was actually in pain for the last couple weeks, that it's very slippery. And when we should play outside and not inside, or we need to buy more rugs. So it's like a lot of that type of management.
Right.
When we do training now, I used to love making him jump up and down the couch, because like he just would get so hyped. Can't do that as much anymore. So like that type of management kind of thing.
If he meets a dog, what does he do?
So we don't do leash greetings. If we do greetings, like let's say I have a foster, I actually don't let him meet the foster actual introductions until about 3 days in.
Okay.
Especially like because it used to be in an apartment, you have a dog now in your space, which is already small. So what we used to do is we would do a pack walk right when the foster gets here. Or like if it's a puppy and it can't be walked because it's not vaccinated, then like we obviously skip that part. The puppy gets to go into the apartment first, sniff everything out, and then we either crate it or put it behind a baby gate, and then Grayson gets to go in.
Okay.
And then they don't get to interact. Like, I don't want people barking and sniffing through the fence. Like, the last thing I need is barrier frustration.
Right.
The gate's there, and they kind of just like exist side by side.
Yeah.
Either myself or my husband will go in and give the foster attention while the other one gives the other dog attention.
Yeah.
So there's equal attention. But like, they don't actually meet.
Okay.
When they do meet, that's like 3 or 4 days in. He will tell me when he's ready to meet.
Okay.
He will be a lot calmer. So when I do let them meet, he is not tolerant of rude, pushy dogs.
Yeah.
And he will overcorrect.
Yeah.
So he's muzzled when he meets them.
Okay.
Usually just as a precaution for the first couple times, just to see what their play style is. And he actually made me so proud because the other dog was like a 4 or 5 month old like pointer mix. So like obviously just wants to play all the time, very pushy.
Yeah.
And Grayson, I don't know if it's because he has a muzzle on or whatever, but he actually came to us to make him stop. Yes. So he didn't once correct Sawyer. Well, we call him Sawyer. His rescue name was Kermit, but I was like, I'm not calling him.
Yeah.
So Sawyer was obviously very pushy. And yeah, he was really good about whenever Sawyer was too much, he would come to us and like, I was so proud of him. He never corrected Sawyer, which Sawyer deserved a couple of times. And then after a couple of days of, like, we still do separate time. There's still a lot of crate and rotate, but there's also now supervised playtime. We also would bring them to like the nearby wall ball court, put a long line on each of them and let them run around. After a couple of muzzled meets, then he's good. But he does take like slow introductions to the max.
Oh,
Right, bubbies?
I'm gonna tell you, I'm super impressed because it's hard work.
It is.
You know, and at the same time, you're doing it for a dog to get adopted.
Yeah, not your
And
own.
yeah, it's
It's a lot. I will give a lot of the credit to my husband who, like, if I was a single dog parent, I don't know if I could do that. Having the second set of hands really, it's a huge help.
yeah.
I tend to pick dogs that I know will potentially work out. We fostered, she was like 10 pounds, 6 weeks old, and Grayson did not like her.
Okay.
So we don't foster young puppies. We do older puppies or we do adult dogs. He does really well with senior dogs that don't, like, if they don't care about him, he doesn't care about them. Our favorite foster by far, his name was Jinx. We fostered him at the end of 2022. Jinx did not care about Grayson at all. He was like some type of like healer mix. So he was very focused on like us and doing agility, and he had energy up the wazoo. And Grayson was like, all right, you keep my humans busy, I'm gonna go nap. And they worked out really well.
And do you keep up with them or?
Some of them I do, some of them like, I pass on my information and they don't respond, and like I don't want to be like too nosy. But when I first started fostering, a lot of them actually got adopted to friends. So like my very first foster got adopted to one of my best friends from college. So I get to keep up with them, see how she's grown, etc. But he's good. He's a good boy. Are you a good boy? Yeah, you're a good boy. The crate and rotate is tiring, but like
It's necessary.
it's necessary because I don't want to push anyone's boundaries.
Yeah.
And like I do want him to like at the end of the day it is his home, right?
Yeah.
So he should feel safe and secure.
Yeah. So how was it when he lived in Brooklyn? Because, so let me tell you, I did something stupid in this trip in that we decided to stay in the financial district, which my dog likes to pee in grass.
Oh no.
And poop in grass. It was very interesting. We would walk. Soho didn't have trees or anywhere for him to pee. So you would see us going all the way to like West Forest, Chelsea, you know, like for him to. And then, and the other thing is that towards the end, so we stayed there 2 nights. Towards the end, he acclimated, right?
Yes.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is kind of awesome. However, I don't know if I would I want to come back and live here with him? It's quite a different life. So I'd love to know, like, from your experiences, how? Well, and you lived in Park Slope, so I guess you had Prospect Park.
So we did. He's also been attacked at Prospect Park, which is why he no longer can do quicker greetings. Being attacked over resources is what also makes him now resource guard towards other dogs. And I have Brooklyn to thank for that. Because it's all my dog is very friendly.
Right.
So I'm not going to recall it and I'm going to let it rush your dog.
Right.
And then it tries to take my dog's resources and then it snaps at my dog.
The thing is, people don't get it. They don't get it. I mean, if you're like in a dog park, right? If you entered the gate, then yeah, go ahead.
So like we did dog parks with him in the beginning. Like that's my dirty secret.
Well,
we did that.
I still go to the dog park
with other dogs.
With other dogs.
Oh, really?
We went to Washington Square Park, and he had a great time. There's obviously dogs that lack social cues, right? I've gotten to the point with Yanko that I'm very confident in his style of telling them, hey, that's not okay. right? And sometimes the dog doesn't get it.
Yeah.
So he'll do it 2 times. And I'll definitely call out the owner and say, hey, he's in a polite way, because sometimes people could take that.
So our problem is that the dog park is near us was as wide as this path to this tree to that gate, and there'd be like 20 dogs in there.
Yeah.
And like people would be humping and like whatever, and like he doesn't like that.
Right.
They wouldn't listen. Owners are on their phone.
Correct.
So like
Yeah.
we can't do that anymore. But to answer your question in general about having a dog in the city, like city dogs do not get enough credit.
No.
It is like he has been a completely different dog since moving to the suburbs.
Yeah.
His reactions were never well, other than that, his meltdown of 2023. Like they were never uncontrollable. He had big reactions, but like we could manage. Here, I don't really have to manage him. We walk by dogs barking at us on invisible fences. We walk by, you know, like the amount of dogs on invisible fences in my neighborhood is insane.
Right.
And they're all just outside barking at us all day. And he's just like, okay, let's keep going. Our next door neighbor has 2 chihuahuas that love barking at him through the fence. He couldn't care less. He doesn't even look at the fence. He's just like, you're gonna throw the ball or what? like there's just zero trigger stacking. There's like, and that also makes me like, I didn't give him enough credit in the city, right? Like, well, you did all of that.
That's what I was like. For me, I'm gonna be honest. I kept getting frustrated seeing these little signs. So you would see a patch of greenery, and they would say no pee or no dog poop, or pee or like curb your dog, and I'm like, this is where they naturally pee and poop.
As New Yorkers, I'll tell you, no one follows those signs.
Like, I realize that
on those signs. Like, what do you want me to do?
Well, because after a while, I was like, well, this is the only green patch I found, so too bad. It made me a little sad, too, because it was kind of like, how do these dogs manage?
So he likes to pee on trees and grass. He does not require it, but he prefers it.
Right.
We actually dog sit this one Mastiff. She will pee in the middle of the street, in the middle of the sidewalk, and I'm just like, how? When it's your only option, you gotta adapt.
You gotta adapt, right? Financial district, I would not recommend you taking your dog there. When it got to Chelsea or like the Central Park was awesome.
Oh, Central Park is great.
Yeah, I was like, I love it. I mean, I understand it, right? As a public spaces, how could we improve public spaces? And so then I see improvements for people, but I, as a dog owner, like that changed my whole perspective on what should a public space be.
It's also rough because even the spaces that do exist, like Fort Greene or Prospect Park, they have designated off-leash hours, but no one really abides by those rules.
Right.
Like you can get ticketed, but like the park police isn't that strict, which makes it extremely difficult after work if I want to walk them through the park, because you never know. But I will also say this. I don't remember how I found it, but I found this lovely group of dog moms who also have reactive dogs in the city. And I found them all on Instagram. I added all of them, and like that community is what also like helped me through it. One of the dogs that we walk with, her name is Susie Says Hi on Instagram. She's not dog friendly. Not?
Well, okay.
She's not dog friendly at all. We pack walk with her almost every night.
Oh,
we used to do like 4 or 5 miles with her and her mom, and we would just chat, and then her mom and I could talk about like at the time, like last year we were both getting married, so we were talking about wedding planning. Then we were talking about Game of Thrones, and like, and it's nice because like when you have another mom that has a reactive dog, they're also like, oh, dog, oh, person. You have each other's backs on the walks.
Right.
I don't know if other people in suburban communities have that, whereas city dog moms, the kind of band together.
Right. Do you find that people here don't understand what a reactive dog is?
I will say this, in general, people here seem to be really good about giving everyone else their personal space.
Okay.
But there are definitely the stereotype of like, their dog is also barking and whatever at us, and they're just like, stop it, Betty, stop doing that. And I'm like, your dog doesn't understand English.
Right.
That's where I will say like, they don't understand. Also like, if your dog is like, full on angrily barking at everyone that walks by your front yard, I would call that reactive.
Correct.
Maybe don't have your dog doing that.
Correct, yeah.
I haven't done that many muzzled walks with him, which I actually like to do.
Okay.
Because then it makes it not important, not exciting, and then he doesn't care about it. And we haven't been doing a lot of those.
Okay.
Because I will admit, I'm a muzzle advocate. I think they're great tools. You don't have to bite to wear one.
Exactly.
But I myself am still cautious and wary of what my neighbors will say or think.
Okay, I agree. When I saw Grayson wearing it, I was like, oh my God, it looks like I would want Yanko to wear.
Yeah, it looks like it's a nice little matching set.
I don't like it to look too rough, but I also don't think it should be too soft. Like there's some muzzles that they make that are like cutesy, and I'm like, no. So yeah, that looks like pretty badass.
Are you a badass?
But with like flair, you know?
Whereas like in the city, with my reactive dog mom group, a bunch of others wore it, and to them it was like, oh, it's a dog tool. Like they didn't give it a second glance.
Correct.
I let him use it all the time, and I would not give it a second thought.
So Yanko's very accustomed to it now.
Right, let's go.
At home, but I haven't worn it out because of where I live.
Got it.
Right.
So like in the city, I would muzzle him whenever I did not feel like dealing with, especially like if I were to walk him when school just lets out.
Oh yeah.
People tend to control their kids if they see this.
Yeah. As opposed to the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
And like sometimes I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to have to be like control your kids or whatever. So I muzzle him and then they leave us alone.
Right.
I actually have been in a situation with Dishka and her mom Paula. We were walking in Dumbo, and some guy, because it's always a guy, some guy was following us, and he was like trying to grab our dogs. And so Paula was like, oh, she's not friendly. She is. Dishka's a trained service dog. But like obviously we don't want you randomly grabbing our dog. Grayson in the city has a leash patch that says needs space.
Yeah.
And apparently he ignored that and kept getting close to us. I was like, oh, our dogs aren't friendly. And he was like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, I'm sure. And then he kept getting closer to Dishka, and Paula's like, she will bite. And he's like, are you sure? Let's try.
Right, but
I'm like, what is wrong with you?
but then the thing is, if your dog bites, you're the one.
Yes, then you're liable.
Yeah.
People are ridiculous.
Or they'll. So he has the patch that the humongous patch that says service animal, and you would not believe how many people are like,
yes.
and you're just like, I'm gonna murder you. You don't know the dog. Like, you have to respect that it's someone else's dog.
Paula always tells us she brings Dishka to like coffee shops to study. She used to be a student. And people would just bend down under the table to pet her with her working vest on. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
100%.
Imagine if I went to go just pet your child. See how you feel. Pet a human child. Yeah, so I will say this. The city is definitely tough for the dogs.
Yep.
But the dog moms make a community that is very supportive. We've worked hard.
Yeah.
We still got work to do.
Well,
right,
it's
bud?
always, it's...
Yeah, we do.
You're never going to stop training. I find.
When I first got him, I asked Paula, Dishka's mom, I was like, how long? Because at that time I was like, oh, Dishka's fully trained. So how long did it take for you to get her to be fully trained? She's like, well, she's not fully trained. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, she listens to you when you recall her? She's like, yeah, but like, that's recall. Yeah. And like, it's not 100%. And like, we're still working on it. And I'm like, what do you mean you're still working on it? Meanwhile, I'm like, oh, it just takes 2 years to train. But then we're done.
It's a lot of trial and error and trying things out, seeing what works, seeing his triggers.
It definitely didn't help. I do think that like, I wish someone had told me sooner. So in 2020, at the end of 2022, we were on a hike and I didn't know it was horse friendly. And so out of nowhere, these 2 gigantic horses are on this trail. And so I thought I pulled into the woods deep enough. I didn't. And like in hindsight, like I should have known I didn't. But he turned around, saw it, and lost his shit. And like to the point where like when we were walking back to the car, one of my friends on the hike dropped her phone on the floor, normal sound. He freaked out. He turned around, started barking, hackles up, like completely freaked out. And then it took him about a week to decompress from that. And I wish someone had told me then that like a week decompression time is a really fucking long time.
Yeah.
And like, but I didn't know. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like he's just an anxious guy. Like I also need some time to decompress. He just needs longer. It is a horse. So I was like, it's fine. But I wish someone was like, that's not normal. Talk to someone. He's had an interesting journey. And that definitely slowed things down, that whenever we did have a reaction, it would take so long to decompress. But that decompression time has definitely lessened with the fluoxetine. So I feel like we've definitely made more progress in the last year than we did the first year. Like last year, we went on a camping trip with someone who joined our group that he's never met before. And she was given instructions to ignore him, and she did. And it went so great. In my mind, I was like, the world's going to end. We're going to have to leave because he's going to go crazy. He was great. And because he is crate trained and does really well in the crate, we brought the crate camping. He settled immediately.
Yeah, it's just management.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like now that we have the tools for him, now we know what can and can't set him off. It does suck because the first year we had him, he was fine at holidays when people came over or whatever. And now I know like that's not his jam. He's gonna get anxious. He's gonna freak out. And so now he stays upstairs in the crate. We go on a hike in the morning so that he's tired.
Yeah.
We still do potty breaks. We still feed him during the day, but he just stays upstairs. And he's completely fine. And then it also means that like I can enjoy my holiday with my family.
Yeah.
And I don't have to micromanage him his every step. Maybe one day he will be able to make good choices and chill, but for now he chills in the crate. And I don't think he really cares. And I'm happy with it, even though everyone's like, oh,
have you ever
don't
had guilt? Or no? I mean, I can't answer that for you, but do you? Because I feel like maybe you don't feel guilt because you're like, I've seen it from the other side.
We did. We actually had a golden retriever growing up that was your quintessential, super friendly dog that you could roll her over on her stomach and she wouldn't care. She was super passive. And we crate trained her until she was house trained, and then she was no longer crated. And so my original idea was actually to do the same thing with him.
Right.
But with the sleep startle and the fear aggression, like we learned how great of a tool it is. And actually when we first moved into this house, that's where he would go during the day. He didn't feel comfortable sleeping on the couch downstairs. Like even though it was our apartment couch, he didn't feel comfortable sleeping on the couch or the dog bed. He went to his crate and he napped there during the day while we worked. Because that's his safe space.
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Is there something you would love to tell like reactive dog parents?
There are a lot more reactive dogs than you think there are.
Yeah.
People don't talk about it, but there are, and you're not alone. Because reactivity is also just like such a large scale. There are dogs that like are great with people and dogs off leash. There are dogs that like aren't with either.
Well, and then I also don't like for me, the word aggressive and reactive are very much confused.
Yes. I also think that aggressive, in most cases, does not define the dog. It defines a certain behavior when they're triggered. But like, in general, if a dog randomly attacks out of nowhere and it's truly out of nowhere, that's completely different than I think every other dog that has aggressive behaviors.
Right.
And like, it doesn't matter how sweet or kind your dog is. Like, at the end of the day, it's an animal. Like, I hate saying that, but like, he's my son, but he's also an animal. And like, animals, when they need to defend themselves and they feel like they need to, that's how they're going to defend themselves.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to know more about our guests, read the show notes down below. And of course, join us next Wednesday for another Possum episode of You, Me, and the Dogs. Bye.